Channel 2 News presents Decision 2016, the race for Senate.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Steve McDonald.
And I'm Austin Baird.
Welcome to our debate between candidates running for the United States Senate. For the next hour, we'll be asking questions to get an idea of where they stand on the issues affecting Alaska and the country.
To determine who would participate in our debate, we set two main standards for candidates to meet. First, they had to be running a serious campaign, traveling all over Alaska and engaging with voters. Second, they also had to have raised at least $10,000 for their campaign efforts. With that, let's meet the candidates.
First up, Ray Metcalf is running for the U.S. Senate as a Democrat. Mr. Metcalf is an Anchorage resident. He also served 4 years on the Alaska House of Representatives.
And Joe Miller is running on the Libertarian ticket. Mr. Miller hails from Fairbanks. He is a graduate of Yale Law School and West Point. Mr. Miller is running as a Libertarian.
Margaret Stock is from Anchorage, and she is running this race as an independent candidate. Ms. Stock is a Harvard graduate and a military veteran. She, too, is an attorney. Candidates, welcome to all of you. Thanks a lot for being here. We must also tell you that we had invited Senator Lisa Murkowski to be a part of our debate. However, her campaign declined our invitation. We want to thank you very much for being here, though.
And candidates, our ground rules are straightforward. We're going to give you each 60 seconds to answer questions. If a candidate's name is mentioned, the candidate is going to have 30 seconds to respond. At the end of the hour, we will give each of you another minute to make a closing statement.
And with that, we're going to begin with Mr. Metcalf. Let's begin with you. I think it's fair to say that you have been a major critic of the political establishment over recent years. Now, if you're elected, you're going to have to work with others to get legislation passed. Convince us that you're going to be able to do that.
Steve, you know, the people that I have disagreements with are people that I believe have been doing some things that they shouldn't have been doing within the political arena. And there's a lot of people within the political arena, and Bernie Sanders, for example. If the Democrats by chance take the Senate, he's liable to be the chairman of the Budget Committee, and I think I'd have some good friends there. And Elizabeth Warren, I think I'd have a very good friend there. Those are the people I could work with, and I'm hoping to see myself sitting beside them in the States or U.S. Senate, and I think I could work well with them.
Mr. Metcalf, thanks very much.
And Mr. Miller, most libertarians, at least in the philosophical sense of the word, do support things like same-sex marriage, drug legalization, abortion rights, and that is reflected in the National Party platform. Of course, the Alaska Libertarian Party platform is different, but some of your critics have criticized your party change from Republican to Libertarian as proving that you're an opportunist. What do you say to critics who have hit you on that?
Well, I was honored to take the Libertarian Party nomination when their nominee stepped down. It was a unanimous decision of the Libertarian Party board. AlaskaLibertarians.com is where that platform is. I think what the Libertarian Party represents, and again, in Alaska, you know, well over 2/3 of Alaskans aren't a member of the Republican or Democratic Party. It represents a desire to have decision-making closer to home. We know that DC values imposed in Alaska aren't working. I think most Alaskans have a deep sense that Republicans and Democrats alike have destroyed much of the future of this country. And the reason why is because crony capitalism and corporatism has taken over. Effectively, people who get elected, they end up basically bringing back the goods to those that elect them. And that's the moneyed interest. We've seen that at play in Alaska time and time again. We see it at play with the PFD. In fact, we've got the same corporate interest that supported Lisa Murkowski back in 2010 funding Alaska's future, that super PAC that's trying to convince Alaskans that their PFD needs to be stolen in order to save it. And I'm fighting them. In fact, last July, I started the Recall the PFD recall effort. This is even before I decided to run for Senate. And the reason why is because I'm fighting for Alaskans. I want to fight that corporatism that has so hurt this country in this state.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Appreciate it. Ms. Stock, finally to you. You've got a lot of professional experience, but it appears very little political experience. You're running as an independent. Would you caucus with the Democratic Party? Would you caucus with the Republican Party? And how do you convince Alaskans that an independent newcomer is ready to be our senator?
That's a great question, Steve. I'm not new to politics. I'm new to elected office, but I have more than 10 years experience working in Washington, D.C. as an Alaskan, but traveling back and forth to Washington, D.C. to work on legislation, to draft bills. I worked on Pentagon projects. I've testified in front of the House and the Senate on numerous occasions. And I'd be a very effective senator because unlike the other two candidates standing here with me, I have real-world experience with the United States Senate, if not as an elected official.
Okay.
As far as the caucus question goes, I'm an independent. I can't commit ahead of time to caucusing with a particular party. That would make me a member of the party. All I can tell you is that we don't know what's going to happen on November 8th, and when I'm elected, I'll make that decision to caucus with whichever group is best for Alaska. I've also been endorsed by the Centrist Project, and their goal is to get enough independents into the United States Senate to break the partisan gridlock that's going on there right now. They hope to have their own independent caucus eventually with enough independent senators to form the most powerful caucus in the United States Senate.
Ms. Stock, thanks very much. This next question's for all three of you. Mr. Metcalf, we're going to lead off with you, give you 60 seconds to answer this. It's a question regarding the economy. The economy obviously is a chief concern for Americans, but especially for Alaskans these days. Because of low oil prices, the state's made dramatic cuts to its budget. Businesses are laying off workers, and services like education have been cut dramatically. As a U.S. Senator, what can you do to bolster Alaska's economy, Mr. Metcalf?
Well, there's a couple things. One of the things that all the presidential candidates are talking about is the infrastructure needs of the entire country, highways, roads, bridges, so on and so forth. And as you know, Alaska has a disproportionately large portion of the funding when these projects are funded. I would be anxious to see a dramatic increase in funding for infrastructure nationwide. I think it's deteriorating. We've got bridges that are falling down, and we've had bridges collapse and highways deteriorating. And the other thing that I would like to see is some new infrastructure up in the Nome and Arctic areas. We've got melting ice up there. We need some ports, and some of that infrastructure could be built with such funds. One of the things that could happen is we're now wondering if a pipeline is ever going to work.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Stock, same question to you, ma'am.
Well, as a U.S. Senator, there's important ways that I can help improve the job climate in Alaska. One of the most important things the federal government does is send money to Alaska to support infrastructure projects, to support such things as energy. And on that note, our energy development here has been so focused on oil and gas that we've missed important opportunities for alternative energy. Those alternative energy projects could be an important source of jobs for Alaska. I've also been involved in a program called the Global Entrepreneur Program here in Anchorage, and it's a program to encourage entrepreneurs to start new businesses up here in Alaska. We can move our economy in a positive direction if we concentrate on high-tech industry coming to Alaska, and that's something we've neglected.
And Mr. Miller, once again, the question is, what can you do as a U.S. Senator to bolster Alaska's economy?
My commitment to Alaskans is I'm going to do everything that I can to better your bottom line. Now, that being said, I think it's a failed design to say that we're going to continue to grab at that ever-shrinking pot of federal money. We know that's a dead-end road. We've been there, done that. In fact, we've had, since 1981, the Murkowski dynasty, continuing to try to grab more and more of those diminishing shares of federal dollars. That's where the political leverage has been applied at the U.S. Senate level. It has not been applied toward actually opening the resource base. If you actually look at what's happened to the resource base in this state, ANWR is still locked up, NPRA mostly locked up, Chukchi Sea development out. And why is that? Because political leverage is being applied for the purposes of the corporatists, the crony capitalists, that get, even though it's a diminishing share, they still get a pot of that money. People need to start working when they're elected from the state of Alaska to the U.S. Senate. They need to start working for the people. And if we choose the other route, we already know what that's brought us. We've got, half our PFD gone. And that's largely a consequence of what's happening with those federal dollars.
You mentioned those golden letters, ANWR. We can't have a debate for Congress without asking this question. And Ms. Stock, we'll start with you. Nearly every candidate who has run for the U.S. Senate or the U.S. House has been asked this question. What are you going to do to open ANWR? What can you do? What's your plan? Is it a plan to do that?
Well, I support opening ANWR if it can be done in a way that protects the environment up in Alaska. I know there's a great deal of dispute right now about whether it can be done successfully because we don't have good oil spill response up in the Arctic yet. We don't have the resources up there to deal with an environmental spill like the Deepwater Horizon, which was catastrophic. And if we had something like that up there in the Arctic, it would be terrible for Alaska. And of course, we don't want to sacrifice short-term gain for a long-term disruption of our environment and the ruining of our renewable resources. In ANWR, it's not economical at the moment because the price of oil is so low. There is some exploring, of course, going on, and we had the big discovery off the coast recently that's very critical. But we need to start diversifying our economy in Alaska and getting away from oil and gas.
Okay, Ms. Stock, thanks very much. Mr. Metcalf, same question to you. How do you open ANWR?
First of all, your earlier question, what are you going to do to get along? I'm one of the people that's willing to play hardball, and I'm not going to roll over for anybody, and I have a history that proves that. So when the right opportunity comes up, I will make my requests and lay it on the line as to what's going to happen if I don't get what I want. So, but I just heard Margaret say it's uneconomic. That's a fundamental lack of knowledge of oil production costs and taxation. The lowest cost oil produced in North America is coming off the North Slope right now. We are still giving away our oil, and the most inexpensive. If you look around at the fracking that was going on, the stuff that was going on in North Dakota, all that shut down when the prices dropped. It didn't drop here, but you had the oil companies spending millions of dollars telling you that there were better deals there. They're not.
Mr. Miller?
So since 1977, the oil industry has provided 90% of our general unrestricted revenues for the state of Alaska. 90%. Certainly we need to diversify, but I refuse to wave the white flag of surrender saying that we're in a post-oil economy. I refuse to do that. And my commitment is to not just give rhetoric toward ANWR, but to actively fight to open it. Now, I'm sure, Steve, that you're going to ask this question later about our presidential candidate, so I won't jump completely to that. But I can tell you that if we end up with the Hillary Clinton presidency, ANWR will not open. She tweeted back in 2015 saying that we shouldn't open it. She doesn't care whether it's safe or not. She just said simply we should not open it. The North Slope, again, has an extraordinary safety record. They've handled the environment well. We have untold hydrocarbon resources in this state, probably more than all the other states combined. I mean, we just gave up, by some estimates, 30 billion barrels of oil from the Chukchi. The same sort of resources exist, the North Slope, MPRA, ANWR, and we have to put real political leverage, not rhetoric. Again, not these folk that we elect that say, hey, we're fighting for you, but then they grab that diminishing share of federal dollars and send it to their cronies. But we actually have to fight to get at the resource base.
Thank you, Mr. Miller.
Yeah, and now we've come to our first question from the candidates. Mr. Metcalf, now you have an opportunity to ask your opponents a question. And as we said at the top of the show, there will be 1 minute for responses. And then at the end, Mr. Metcalf, you'll have a final opportunity to share a few words.
Okay, my first question for...
It'll go to both candidates, Mr. Metcalf.
Oh.
Yeah, it goes to both.
Okay. My first question is, Mayor Begich, when he was serving as mayor, he received approximately $100,000 from John Rabini. This is all documented. And I see that Mayor Begich has endorsed one of my opponents, and my opponent knows about the documentation, has received a copy of it. It was documented by the Daily News. And so my question was written for one person, and I apologize for that. I had separate questions for each, and that's what the way I understood the rules. So in any case,
that was our understanding too.
In any case, so here is my question. The sign on the door at West Point says, "I will not cheat, lie, steal, or tolerate those who do." And Margaret has accepted Mark Begich's endorsement, and I think that is putting aside that requirement, that pledge. And so my question is to Margaret: is it appropriate to sweep that under the rug and pretend it didn't happen, accept his endorsement? How do you dovetail that with your experiences at West Point?
Well, I didn't attend West Point. I attended Harvard as an undergraduate. I was on the faculty at West Point, but I am proud to have Mark Begich's endorsement. I worked personally with him on a number of issues over the years. I found him to be approachable, intelligent, and willing to put time and effort into solving the problems of his constituents. I did go on a political corruption tour with Ray Metcalf many weeks ago, and Ray gave me a lot of materials about alleged corruption among numerous Alaska public officials, not just Mark Begich, but he also accused Tony Knoll of corruption and Ted Stevens and a whole host of other folks. And frankly, I couldn't make heads or tails of the materials that he gave me. Ray did say that he had worked with federal prosecutors to convict Bill Allen, and I assume that Ray shared the materials he gave me also with these federal prosecutors, and they apparently decided that there was nothing to the materials and decided not to go after Mr. Begich. So I really can't tell you anything other than there doesn't seem to be any substance to the allegations that Ray is making tonight.
Margaret.
And Ray, you can go ahead and ask a second question of Mr. Miller.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Mr. Miller, when Bill Clinton left office,
And Ray, if you could speak up, I got tanker ears and didn't wear my hearing aids. I apologize.
when Bill Clinton left office, there was a surplus coming in the door, and surplus of revenue. And it was projected at the time that we would probably be able to pay off our national debt within 5 years. There were economists talking about fixing Social Security, Medicare for the long term, maybe even expanding those things, and the prospect of possibly even having single-payer medical for all Americans, all thought to possibly be doable if we just simply stayed on the same trajectory. And the first thing that GW did was abolish all of that surplus. What would your tax policy be?
You know, Ray, that's a good question. It reflects the problem that we have with both parties. I've been a staunch critic of the Republicans and the fact that they've expanded, in fact, at the time of that administration that took over after Clinton, expanded the federal debt and the role of the federal government more radically and more expansively than any past administration, save perhaps FDR. This is a problem of both parties. It's not a problem of just the Democrats and the big spenders there. It's not just a Hillary Clinton problem with her desire to basically have single-payer health care, which, by the way, I think the whole Obamacare thing is designed to move us into that direction. And I can guarantee you, with the Hillary presidency, you're going to see health care problems even catapult beyond where they're at right now. But the problem is that when you're in power and you're part of the whole corporatist structure where you're feeding money back to those that helped you get into office, it's all about expanding the debt on the backs of who? The people. It's the same thing with the PFD grab. You know, don't cut the special interest, don't cut the bureaucracy, instead take half your money, because really, in these politicians' view, the people don't matter. It's the special interests that do.
And Mr. Metcalf, just a brief response if you like.
I agree with you that the problem is with both parties, and I do have my fingers crossed that we will see a single-payer health care system replace what is currently on the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Metcalf.
Thank you. And when our debate continues, we will talk about fighting the feds.
Yep, we'll hear from the candidates on what they feel needs to be done about the Affordable Health Care Act. If anything, stay with us.
At Alaska Dental Care, we want you to know we care. We care about your dental health. We care about your smile. We care about you. While we stress quality in all we do, we also make our dental care affordable. From our family to yours, Dr. Gardner, Dr. Parks, and Dr. Howard invite you to come and enjoy our new patient cleaning and checkup special. Alaska Dental Care. We care.
Alaska Dental Care. We care.
If you're a smart shopper, then you're our favorite customer, because you're going to see the value in Bailey's the moment you walk in. We buy in such great quantity that we negotiate the absolute best price from our vendors. Some stores offer 30, 40, 50% off, but off of what? Some made-up inflated price? At Bailey's, we won't play those games with you. Our everyday low price beats the competition every time, sale or no sale. So don't be fooled by high markups and phony sales. Get our best price every day. Get Buddy's price.
I'm Don Young, and I approve this message.
Here's what's at stake for Alaska in this election. Don's opponent wants to be on this team, but they're not friends of Alaska. No matter what Don's opponent says, he can't get the job done with friends like that. Don can, Don does. Alaska needs Don Young now more than ever.
This election season,
When you need answers, access, and insight
to help make sense of it all.
from across the nation.
to the races here at home,
we have the campaign covered.
together.
We're your home for Decision 2016.
Welcome back to Decision 2016, the race for Senate. Candidates Ray Metcalf, Joe Miller, and Margaret Stock are here with us. We want to talk about Alaska's relationship with the federal government, which can perhaps be best described as a love-hate relationship.
Many Alaska politicians do love to talk about federal overreach, but that rarely comes up when we're talking about cannabis. Alaska's marijuana industry is getting off the ground, but the substance is still illegal under federal law. That leaves cash-heavy businesses without access to banking services and a lot of other problems. So now the question, do you support the federal government dictating how Alaska regulates many aspects of the new legal cannabis industry here? We'll start with you, Mr. Miller.
I've, since 2010, been a strong proponent of constitutionally limited government. And there is no enumerated power in the Constitution that provides for federal law enforcement of narcotics, of drugs. Now, at the borders, I think there's an argument, but certainly within the states, that's a power that's reserved to the states. So what we see so often, when we grow a federal government to the size it is now, it continues to take and take and take. I was an attorney in the Jones case. I actually filed a brief in that case about GPS tracking, where the government thought that it could go put a GPS tracker on your car without any search warrant. And I argued that that was a violation it was a violation of search and seizure, that in fact the government needed a search warrant for that. But it was one example of how the federal drug war has expanded into areas and intruded onto fundamental liberties that certainly is not the role of the federal government. At the state level, we get to choose. If you want to move to a state that has legalized cannabis, go to a state that's voted for it. If you disagree with it, go to one of the states that hasn't. It's part of the federal system that we have so that people can govern themselves at home and they don't have the DC bureaucrats imposing their values on us.
And thank you. Now, Mrs. Stock.
Thank you for that question. I don't think Joe answered the question that you asked, but it's the Commerce Clause, and I believe at Yale Law School they teach about the Commerce Clause and how the importation of a controlled substance between states is subject to the federal regulation under the Commerce Clause. But my position on that issue is pretty simple. I believe that federal and state law should be in harmony. I don't think it's right that if the citizens of a state decide that they're going to legalize a substance like cannabis, that the feds should continue to outlaw it. I support harmonization of state and federal law on that issue, and I would deschedule marijuana, move it either to its own schedule or move it off the schedule that it's on right now. I don't think it's fair to Alaskans that people are told they can legally invest in a marijuana operation, they can legally use the substance under state law, and then the feds are going to be busting them. We spend way too much money putting people in jail who smoke marijuana and use marijuana, and it also has some medicinal purposes. So I support harmonization of federal and state law on that issue.
And before we move on, anything you'd like to add, Mr. Miller?
I would just say that the states have a distinct role from the federal government. Harmonization is a concept which is not spoken of in the Constitution in the context that has just been offered. We have the 10th Amendment that says if it's not enumerated in the Constitution, the states get it. The 9th Amendment, what's not reserved there, the people get it. Frankly, that's how we get along as a people with diverse political opinions. That's how we keep this system of government together, is by allowing people to choose at the local and state level. And I think that's an encouraging thing that states are starting to do that.
And Mr. Metcalf.
Basically, I believe that the war on drugs has been a disaster, and I have worked on most every effort to legalize marijuana that's taken place up here. As far as the Commerce Clause is concerned, just because they have claimed the authority through the Commerce Clause doesn't mean they have to do so. And I would like to see the drug laws that we have relaxed. As far as trafficking, we can keep those in place, but as far as use, I don't think we should be penalizing people or putting them in jail for what they put in their body or choose to put in their body. And if it's a drug, if they have a problem, it's a medical issue, not a criminal issue.
Okay, Mr. Metcalf, thanks very much. Next question, we'll have Ms. Stock start off for us. The Affordable Health Care Act is another topic that's at the center of many debates. It has many critics, but it also is providing health care coverage to some 20 million Americans and by one estimate around 21,000 Alaskans. What's your take on the health care system post-Obamacare?
Well, I'm glad you asked about the Affordable Care Act because it originally was a Republican idea. It was supposed to be a market-based solution to avoid socialized medicine in America. And the idea was that all Americans would have private health insurance if they weren't covered by some other system, and that would allow all Americans to be insured, and then we wouldn't have to worry about people having to go into bankruptcy court to deal with catastrophic healthcare injuries. It hasn't worked that well in Alaska, and there's a number of reasons for that. Among them are the fact that Alaska has the highest healthcare costs in the nation. I'm a small business owner, and I know that there are not enough young, we call them invincibles, who are signing up for healthcare in Alaska. And as a result of this premiums have skyrocketed, and we're down to one private insurer handling the private exchanges. If Congress was actually interested in fixing the act, we could fix it. We could bring healthcare to all Americans, and I think that's the ultimate goal. But we need transparency in the market, we need to allow insurance to cross state lines, and we need to get a handle on the costs. The solution is not to repeal the Affordable Care Act, it's to fix it.
Thank you very much. Mr. Metcalf, your turn.
As opposed to the suggestion that we should work with the insurance companies, I would like to see a system that just eliminates them. They're a burden and a cost that we shouldn't have, and I think we should go to a flat, affordable, or single-payer system. I'm an absolute supporter of what Bernie Sanders has proposed in his campaign, and I should bring up one more thing. You know, single-payer was on the table with the Affordable Care Act. And the people that went ballistic over it were the chambers of commerce, the businesses that complain about the burden. Why do they complain about the burden but not want to have it lifted off their shoulders? I believe that they use health care to enslave, to a degree, the American public. If you want health care, you're going to have to work for my corporation at low wages because you can't leave, because if you leave, you won't have health care. That is part of the only reason I can think of why they would oppose single payer. Why would they not want to have the burden lifted from their shoulders?
Thank you, Mr. Metcalf. Mr. Miller?
I think Obamacare was designed to fail. And it's in place not just due to the Republicans or the Democrats, it's due to both parties. Republicans continue to fund something that many of them say ought to be repealed. They're double talking. In fact, Murkowski has said at one point that she wanted to repeal it. Now she says she wants to fix it. The reality is there is no fix. It's on the verge of collapse. There are plans across, Bloomberg just reported, plans across 32 states that are on the verge of either getting fundamentally changed or actually eliminated. Aetna has just announced it lost $300 million in 2015 alone. More than 1 million are going to lose their health care insurance in 2017. A review of Obamacare reveals that 1.4 million will lose their health insurance, including those that are losing it in 2016. It's not a plan that's working for all Americans. That's very clear. And the reason why is because it doesn't integrate in market-based solutions. The market-based solutions that we need are things like tax incentivized catastrophic programs with a health savings account that you can use as you see fit. You don't lose it. It's money that you can then put yourself in the decision maker for buying your health care. You make a cost-benefit analysis before you spend it instead of having a third-party payer in between you and the medical professional. That's the way forward, in my estimation.
And Mr. Miller, we won't interrupt for long. It's actually now your turn to ask your opponent's questions, so if you'd like to just continue.
Well, Ray, I'm going to go ahead and start with you. I've got separate questions for each candidate. Ray, you've been involved in anti-corruption efforts. So, a decade ago, Alaska was rocked by a federal corruption scandal. You remember VICO. VICO actually funded Murkowski, I think, to the tune of tens of thousands, maybe $34,000. Now there's a direct campaign that's funding independent expenditures that are funding this major steal your PFD to save your PFD. It's called Alaska's Future. These same corporate interests are not just funding that campaign, but they're also funding Lisa Murkowski's campaign. Do you see a parallel between VICO and this new rise of corporatism that seems to have taken control of Senator Murkowski?
Joe, I have a long history with the Permanent Fund. I was the co-author of the original investment strategy for the fund. In '99, I led the campaign to prevent Tony Knowles from accessing and raiding the fund. At that time, by the way, VICO spent $700,000 opposing what we were, or supporting Tony and his effort to get into the fund. And then when Lisa tried to get in to cap the dividend at $1,000 in 2002, I campaigned against that, made a lot of noise over it. It didn't happen. And then when I went after Ben Stevenson, by the way, it was suggested I didn't have a lot to do with these FBI agents. Lots of agents came up here to take the same tour that Margaret mentioned earlier. And there were, out of that, 12 indictments, 10 convictions, 9 jail terms. And the only reason that the other people did.
Time flies. And Mr. Miller, you've got a question now for Margaret Stock.
Rebuttal.
What's that?
Do I get a rebuttal?
You do. Yes, you do. Go ahead.
There's really not much to say to that except for, Ray, you were probably serving in the legislature maybe at the same time that Lisa Murkowski was when she sponsored a PFD grab. And then, of course, the people of the state, I think, voted, 83% say hands off the PFD. And then she turns around, and after that, votes again or sponsors again another effort to take the PFD. And then earlier this year, made the comment that, in fact, the PFD should be on the table to balance the state's budget. And again, the issue that I think Alaskans are starting to understand is that at the state level and at the federal level, we have representatives that are not looking out for their interests, they're looking out for all the corporatists and the bureaucracies and everything else that wants that government money.
You've got another question to ask, sir.
It's the same question?
No, different question, Margaret. I got a different one for you.
Okay.
We're changing this on the fly.
We're changing this on the fly.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I talk about the PFD, though, since he mentioned my name?
I'll tell you what, we're just going to go ahead with Mr. Miller for right now.
So, Senator Murkowski voted to confirm Interior Secretary Sally Jewell and also Eric Holder, who happened to be the most anti-Second Amendment Attorney General, I think, in the history of the United States. If you were in Senator Murkowski's office, would have you done the same? And if so, how is that fighting for Alaska?
Well, I don't believe that you should hold up confirmations of important public officials because you're upset about another issue. I think that's an ineffective way to be a United States Senator. It doesn't allow the federal government to properly operate. And I think what's been going on in the United States Congress right now is actually a travesty where we have hundreds of positions that have gone unfilled. We can't get judicial nominations through the Senate. And basically, senators are obstructionists. And a result of them being obstructionists, the Senate is not functioning properly, the judiciary is not functioning properly, and the executive branch has lots of unfilled positions. My position in the Senate would be that if the president nominates someone for a position, I'm going to hold a hearing. I'm going to determine whether that person's qualified for the job. And if the person's qualified for the job, I will approve their nomination. If they're not qualified, I will give them a thumbs down and not approve their nomination.
Mr. Miller, go ahead.
If they're working against Alaskan interests, they're certainly not qualified. And I think probably Alaska is one of the most pro-gun states in the nation. And to have somebody like Eric Holder, who, by the way, said that his single biggest failure at the time he was Attorney General was the fact that he failed to enact meaningful, reasonable gun measures. And I just don't think that's the kind of person that, as a U.S. Senator representing this state and its interests, we should be supportive of. And then, Sally Jewell. I mean, she made the comment that she thought the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge was too special to develop. That is not looking out for Alaska's interests. Not
well,
looking
you
out
can
for
vote
America's
against her
interests.
when there's a hearing.
It's not looking in any way for those things that are helping out Alaska. And when you vote for them, when you vote for those people, that creates an issue.
Ms. Stock, I'm going to give you just a little bit of time because your name did come up in one of the questions there.
I think my point is you hold a hearing, and if you don't think the person's qualified, you vote down that you don't think they're qualified. But you hold the hearing. You give the person a fair hearing.
Yep.
On the PFD, I'm the only person standing up here who ever filed a lawsuit against the state of Alaska to preserve the PFD for Alaskans. I won that lawsuit. It was more than 10 years ago. I'm very proud of that. But I will say the PFD issue is not a United States Senate issue. It's an issue to be decided in Juneau, and we are running for the United States Senate. We will have little or no influence on the permanent fund dividends.
We're going to leave that question
when a U.S. Senator, though, weighs in on the PFD issue, and she says to the state of Alaska that the PFD is on the table to balance the budget back in January, it absolutely makes a fair game. It reflects their governing ideology.
We're going to take a break, candidates. Thanks very much for that. Up next, who do you support in the race for Senate, or for President, rather?
We're going to ask the candidates who they are voting for and why.
It's 4x4 headquarters, Worthington Ford, with over 700 4x4s on sale. Just bring your $95 down and drive home one of these incredible deals. Here's a Ford Edge, just $10,900. Here's a Chevy 1500, just $14,900. Here's a Ford F-150, just $17,900. And here's a Nissan Rogue, just $18,900. It's giant Worthington Ford on Gamble.
Get involved in feeling good. Alaska Fitness is your 24-hour answer to a healthier life. Feeling good just got easy at Alaska Fitness with our back-to-school special. Get an entire year for only $3.99. We are Alaska's only full-service, locally owned 24-hour fitness club. Membership includes over 15 free classes. We have a full array of cardio and weight areas, steam room, sauna, childcare, and personal trainers. Don't miss out. 1 year, $3.99. Alaska Fitness. Feeling good just got easy.
Upgrade to first class at Giant Don's Flooring America with free Alaska Airlines Mileage Plan miles. Transform your home with colorful Stainmaster carpet, 15% off. Beautiful hardwood for $3.99 and laminate flooring for $1.99. Plus an unbelievable 2 years interest-free financing. Hurry in because this offer is limited. The more you buy, the more you fly with free Alaska Airlines miles. Only at Giant Don's Flooring America, Anchorage, and Wasilla, and GiantDons.com. Buy today, install tomorrow.
Welcome back to Decision 2016, the race for Senate.
Welcome back to KTUU's Senate to U.S. Senate debate. We invited all candidates who raised $10,000 and have been visiting the state speaking with Alaskans. Joe Miller, Margaret Stock, and Ray Metcalf are all here with us this evening. Senator Lisa Murkowski was invited but decided not to attend. Who we support in this divisive presidential race, of course, also says something about our broader beliefs and values. So that brings us to our next question. Who are you supporting for president and why? Let's start with Ms. Stock.
Well, there's a broad and growing consensus that Donald Trump is not fit to be the President of the United States. I've been saying that since the start of my campaign. Lisa Murkowski and Dan Sullivan have come to the belated conclusion that they agree with me, and they've been shamed into finally saying that as well. There's only one person who appears to be winning the presidential race at this point, and that's Hillary Clinton. She has about a 95% chance of being the President of the United States on November 8th. I have some concern about dynastic political families, and that's both in Alaska and nationally, but it's pretty clear that Hillary Clinton is going to be our next president. And I believe it will be good for Alaska to have an independent senator who can both stand up to the President of the United States, but who can also work with her for the good of Alaska. Murkowski is a member of a party that has heaped relentless criticism on the outgoing president, and they look committed to doing the same for Hillary Clinton. I don't think this type of perpetual adversarial relationship is good for the state of Alaska, and I think an independent senator will be good for Alaska. I will vote for Hillary Clinton on November 8th.
Thank you. And Mr. Miller?
I think Hillary Clinton will be devastating for the state of Alaska. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that she's going to get elected, but I find it very troubling that those that say they're fighting for Alaska are aiding and abetting her campaign. She will be catastrophic for Alaska on resource development. She wants to shut down coal. She said that. She wants to shut down ANWR. She doesn't ever want it to be developed. She wants to overregulate the industries that are the backbone of the state. The people that have jobs in the state, most of them have jobs because of resource extraction. We can't do that to the people of Alaska. We have to fight for what's best for Alaska. My perspective is if you're out there fighting for Hillary Clinton because you say that the alternative is just unfit for office, you're playing right into the hand of those that want to shut Alaska down and make it a national park for probably the next 100 years. That's not why my family and I are here. Not by any stretch of the imagination. I came here for the extraordinary opportunity that Alaska offers. We have more wealth than any other state in the entire nation, if only we were allowed to do it. And by the way, I haven't heard Trump say anything that makes me want to give up my guns.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Metcalf.
Leading up to this, where we are today, I was a very hard worker on Bernie Sanders' campaign. And I frankly agree with Bernie that the system was rigged. And I think he would be the nominee had the system been fair and even and evenly handed applied. That said, I'm also remember when Ralph Nader, for all practical purposes, probably cost Al Gore 2 states that probably would have put him over the top. I think the country would be far better off if it had not had 8 years of George Bush, and therefore I'm going to cast my unenthusiastic vote for Hillary. But as far as rights that and fighting for Alaska, I think that her appointments to the courts will do a much better job of taking care of Native rights and minority rights, and I think that's a very important issue.
Mr. Metcalf, thanks. We've got some military experience on our panel. Our country, the recent history, of course, we've been embroiled in 2 wars over the last decade or so. Are there any circumstances, and Mr. Miller, we'll start with you, any circumstances at all that you would support our country going back to war?
Certainly, if we have significant national interests that are at stake, and if Congress authorized the action. However, I'm by no means a neocon, not anywhere close. I served in the first Desert Storm, the first Gulf War, served with distinction there, decorated combat vet. I know what war is. I've been in the middle of it. And frankly, it's the last thing that you want to send your youth to do in a country. And moreover, it's the last thing you want to do when a country is up to its eyeballs in debt, $20 trillion. By the way, that's roughly $13 trillion more than when Senator Murkowski took office after her dad appointed her to that seat in 2002, 2003. Frankly, where we're at right now as a nation is we can't afford these entanglements overseas unless they directly threaten the national security of this country. And if Congress authorizes the act, then yes, it should go forward. But those are very, very limited circumstances. Where we're at right now with Hillary, I mean, look at the disaster that her State Department and Obama created worldwide. I mean, Libya is an absolute nightmare. Syria, a catastrophe. Iraq, Iran, you pick your poison. It's a nightmare, and her as president will be catastrophic for our future.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Stock?
I would support going to war if our nation were attacked in a way that threatened our national interests and our national security.
Can you maybe describe that scenario a little bit more? What would it take?
Well, in World War II, the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor and we went to war. We've gone to war when we have been physically attacked in the past, and that's in order to defend ourselves. I would not support sending massive numbers of troops into Syria. I think that's a no-win situation, and I would not support that. And I do agree that Congress must authorize the use of force if we do go to war overseas. And I would expect, as a United States Senator, to argue heavily with the president if the president chose to send troops in overseas without the authority of the United States Congress behind it.
Ms. Stock, thanks very much. Mr. Metcalf, your
The
answer, please.
majority of our adventures with adventurism in military efforts has turned out in hindsight to be a mistake. Vietnam was a mistake. Most people agree with that. Iraq was a disaster. When I look at Aleppo and Syria, I'm reminded that on one side we're sitting here looking at all this mayhem on television, but right now, as we speak, there are American bombs dropping in Yemen, doing exactly the same thing, starving people, maiming children, and we're not seeing it, but it's our bombs. And if you back up, George Bush bragged about the bombing of Baghdad, and we saw mushroom clouds over their horizon coming up from our bombs. They called it shock and awe. What do you think was going on there? And had we just simply stayed out of there, we probably wouldn't be seeing what's going on in Syria today.
Thank you, Mr. Metcalf.
And of course, in our country right now, there is a big ongoing debate over electronic mass surveillance. Of course, we're trying to balance the need to keep us safe from terrorists and looking into foreign powers that are trying to attack the United States in one way or another. Trying to balance that, of course, with civil rights. Very complicated issue. Where do you stand? Let's start with you, Mr. Metcalf.
If it were up to me, I would repeal the Patriot Act entirely and start over. I think that, I consider Snowden a hero. I think he should be, we have a right to know what our government does, and we have a right to know when they're spying on us and how they're doing it. So when I look at the Patriot Act, if you go back to just prior to World War II, Hitler passed an act. It was one of his first things he did, and it's not that dissimilar from the Patriot Act. It gave him the right to do things that the Patriot Act gave our government. And you saw where that led, and when I think about someone like Trump getting elected and having that tool in his hand, that's scary.
Thank you. Ms. Stock.
Well, I was the director of the National Security Law Program at the United States Military Academy at West Point, New York, when I taught there. I've held positions of sensitivity and trust with the United States government doing counterterrorism work over the years, and I've worked heavily with the national intelligence community. But I believe in the Constitution, and the Constitution does not require us to trade liberty for security. The Constitution really is our security blanket, It's important when we put in place these new surveillance programs that we keep in mind the liberties that Americans enjoy, and that having liberties is actually part of our security. So I support a rigorous oversight of the intelligence community to make sure, as a United States Senator, I'll hold hearings to make sure that Americans' rights are not being violated when we implement new surveillance systems.
Thank you. Mr. Miller.
I'll fight every effort to infringe upon your fundamental liberties by the federal government. I actually was involved in litigation or an amicus brief against the Obama administration's NDA case, Hedges versus Obama, where basically the National Defense Authorization Act, it required, actually, or allowed the U.S. federal government to detain U.S. civilians on very limited authority, aiding and abetting, basically providing support to adversaries. A fundamental violation of fundamental rights that are basically entrusted to us by the Bill of Rights. If we live in a nation where we don't have liberties that aren't basically provided, the parameters of which are in the Bill of Rights, if we instead decide that we're going to be a nation that decides that we're going to basically say that, you know, national security interests or other things, that is basically what's going to decide what your rights are. Those are freedoms that, those are things that I cannot be part of. And it's one of the reasons why I've worked as a private attorney against those things. But even better yet, if you choose me as your U.S. Senator, I'm going to do everything I can to prevent the security agencies from tapping phones and taking metadata and everything else that don't have anything to do with terrorists, but have everything to do with government control.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Appreciate that. When we come back, Ms. Stock will ask her questions of the other candidates, and we'll have our final statements as well. Stay with us.
Time is running out on Sadler's incredible half-price dividend sale. Right now, you'll find half-price specials on sofas, leather sofas, and reclining sofas. There are half-price specials on recliners, sofa sleepers, and coffee tables. Plus, we have dining rooms, bedrooms, and youth bedrooms at half their original price. You can furnish every room in your house while enjoying huge savings during our spectacular PFD sale. This half-price event has been extended through Sunday, October 23rd. It's just another reason to step up to Sadler's.
I've been fishing here since I was born. It's something that you look forward to doing and try to do it the best you can. You know, oftentimes you're cold because it's wet, it's rainy, and it's blowing, and you're out there for a long time. But we don't get to pick what weather the fish come in, so if it's cold and wet, it's cold and wet. Just so nice to come back to a warm cabin, be able to dry out all your gear. The Toyo stove is just so reliable, it'll make all the difference.
On both large and small aircraft, weight and balance are key for safe travel. You fly on many different kinds of aircraft. Passengers can unknowingly pressure airline personnel and pilots by asking them to carry oversized bags. Just because it fits doesn't mean it's safe. Every pound counts. Before you fly, speak with your pilot or air carrier about how much weight is safe to fly with. Be part of the circle of safety. This message is brought to you by the FAA Alaska Region and KTUU.
Well, welcome back to our debate for the U.S. Senate. Once again, we want to introduce our candidates, Ray Metcalf and Margaret Stock and Joe Miller. Once again, we invited Senator Lisa Murkowski to be part of our debate. Her campaign declined our invitation, so we're grateful for these three candidates to be here tonight.
And now right back where we left off, Ms. Stock, you have an opportunity to ask your opponent's question.
Okay, and just to clarify, I can ask a different question of each one?
Yes, you may.
All right, okay. So Joe, you and I both support the Second Amendment. You and I have both served in the Army. You and I both own guns. The annual gun deaths in the United States right now about match the total number of deaths from traffic accidents per year. And the Alaska Dispatch just published an article in March pointing out that Alaska is #1 in the country in gun deaths per capita. Congress has effectively prevented the Center for Disease Control from studying the causes of and the solutions for gun deaths. Do you support that continuing restriction on the Center for Disease Control?
So I don't think that the federal government should be doing anything to restrict gun rights. And I think the vast majority of Alaskans, whether they're left, right, or center, agree with that. What we see are far too many judges and far too many decision makers in Washington, D.C., deciding that they have the right to get into our pockets and determine what we do with our guns and how we use our guns. It's a state issue. The state of Alaska should be on top of it. Better yet, even groups like the National Rifle Association. I'm proud to have, by the way, the endorsement of Gun Owners of America. And the reason why is because I'm standing firmly, of course, the most firmly of any candidate running for U.S. Senate right now in Alaska for guns. It's a fundamental liberty. It's one that can't be taken away. It's one that we shouldn't use all sorts of excuses like, whatever the federal government comes up with. Eric Holder, of course, viewed, and this is the guy that Lisa Murkowski voted to confirm, okay? We aren't talking about letting him go to hearing. She voted to confirm Eric Holder and Sally Jewell, incidentally. Eric Holder viewed his biggest failure of not imposing more gun control on American citizens.
Didn't
Not the
answer
federal
my
government's
question.
right. Not the federal government's right.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Go ahead, Margaret.
Joe, you didn't answer my question. But, okay.
Do you have?
I get a separate question for.
Oh, do you want to make a rebuttal
No,
statement?
he didn't say whether he's willing to let the government study gun deaths.
Okay.
He didn't answer that. So
I don't think the federal government has any role in regulating our guns, period.
It's not regulating them. It's studying why people are dying from guns, and a lot of it's suicide in Alaska.
We have a lot of problems like that, Steve, and absolutely it's something that at the state level or any other level, but not the federal government that wants to take our guns and use it as excuses. That's what it's about. By the way,
so you're saying we should not study why we have the highest gun death rate in the country?
As long as we aren't regulating, and that's the point. When we have regulation, all these studies result in regulation. I mean, that's how DC works, right? Study it, impose regulations, take it. Look what our veterans are facing with now. People coming back from PTSD are being tagged by the federal government. Federal government wants to take their guns. They're looking at disability lists with Social Security, the same thing.
I'm sorry, Mr. Miller. We're going to have to move on. Do you have a question for Mr. Metcalf?
I do. It's a different question, though. Ray, you won the Democratic Party primary, but you don't seem to be working at all with the Democratic Party. You've labeled the Democratic Party leaders as, quote, hacks and crooks. And would it be fair to say that you're not running with the support of the Democratic Party in the state of Alaska?
Well, the chairman of the party has said that she supports me completely. I will grant you that there are people within the Democratic Party, and they are the people that have opposed all of the anti-corruption efforts that I have pushed. And I'm going to give you an example. We went to the state convention, and we had a plank in our platform, and it was adopted by the platform committee on a 27-6 vote to put in a statement that said, if elected, we support legislation requiring all elected officials to declare a conflict of interest and recuse themselves from voting on legislation appropriating cash or resources or competitive advantages to themselves, their family, their employers, their business partners, or their contributors. The folks that you're talking about didn't want that in the party platform so bad, they actually found a way to adjourn the entire convention without adopting a platform to avoid that kind of language being in the platform. And that's who you're working with.
Thank you, Mr. Metcalf. Thank you very much. You have 30 seconds to refute
Thank you.
that.
I'm working with folks across the political spectrum. I have supporters among the Libertarian Party, the Republican Party, the vast majority of Alaskans who are independent. It's about 54% of Alaskans, as well as the Democratic Party. I'm proud of that support. I'm proud that most recently Vic Fisher, the father of the Alaska Constitution, has endorsed me. I am a pragmatic consensus builder. The Centrist Project, which has endorsed me, made the same call. And I want to get to work in Washington, D.C. on behalf of Alaskans. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Stock.
And now it's time for final statements. Each of you are going to have 1 minute to make a final pitch to Alaska voters. We drew straws before the program, and Mr. Miller, we are going to start out with you.
So friends, ask yourself, are we better now than we were 6 years ago? I think most of us can answer in unison, no we aren't. Alaska's in a recession. Half your PFD is gone. You know, we started this recall effort back in July. I pledged to you, by the way, I'm going to continue to fight that if you elect me or if you don't. But the fact of the matter is, it's an important issue. People are suffering across the state. The effort to basically bring in more and more federal dollars from a diminishing federal purse, it's not working for Alaska. Basically, the 36-year Murkowski dynasty has ended up taking us down a dead-end road that is only going to lead to more pain. It's only going to lead to more suffering of Alaskans. You know, half your PFD was gone this year. Probably next year, they're going to steal the other half. And the people doing that are the same corporate interests, the same ones that are supporting Lisa Murkowski's campaign today, because she doesn't care about you. I can assure you, if you elect me, if you send me to the Senate, I'm going to fight with everything in my being to make your life better and to make Alaska a bright, shining city on a hill, not just for those of you here, but for the entire country. Thank you, and may God bless you.
That was Joe Miller, the Libertarian Party candidate for United States Senate. Next, we go to Margaret Stock.
Thank you so much, and thank you for hosting this debate. I think it's unfortunate that Lisa Murkowski was unwilling to come tonight and debate the important issues facing Alaskans. Again, my name is Margaret Stock. I'm a 30-year Alaskan and a 28-year military veteran. I was a military police officer in the Army Reserve for 28 years. I'm running as an independent for the United States Senate because our present Congress is gridlocked and it's dysfunctional, and this is because of partisan warfare. It's now spreading its dysfunction to the executive and the judiciary branches of the government. Congress has repeatedly proved itself incapable of addressing the big issues facing the United States: campaign finance reform, climate change, healthcare reform, infrastructure repair, making college affordable for young people, and making our economy work for everyone, not just the wealthy. Citizens United has unleashed a flood of dark money into the state of Alaska and into our elections nationwide. The corporations and the people at the top are happy with the status quo, and I am not. I'm running as an independent. I will not put party above country. I have not accepted and I will not accept corporate PAC money. Lisa Murkowski has accepted millions. I will only be beholden to the voters of the state of Alaska, and I would appreciate your vote on November 8th. Thank you.
And again, that was independent Margaret Stock, candidate for United States Senate. Mr. Metcalf.
Yes, Austin. I'm effectively your anti-corruption candidate, and I can assure you that it's my opinion that corruption is killing the American dream, it's killing the Alaskan dream, and we heard the comment that the PFD is not a federal issue. You know, you would not have a PFD today if the feds had not come in here and busted a whole bunch of legislators that were taking bribes to give Alaska's oil away. If we had gotten a fair share for our oil, your permanent fund would be about 5 times larger than it is today, and so would your dividend. And we wouldn't have a problem when the oil ran out. We would have so much money that we could live off the savings for perpetuity. And that is a problem because, in the sense that it took the feds to do something about it. Unfortunately, it took corruption. Corruption won again within 6 years of that raid where they busted 6 legislators and 4 lobbyists. Within 6 years, the oil companies had control of your legislature again. And it's all about corruption. If you want prosperity in this state, you have to address corruption. It's costing you your freedom.
Mr. Metcalf, thanks very much. Just a reminder, Election Day is November 8th. Polls are open at 7 o'clock in the morning. They close at 8 o'clock in the evening. Voters in Alaska will decide the U.S. House and Senate races, and of course, the presidential races on that ballot as well.
And of course, there are also numerous state, house, and Senate races all over Alaska, along with a proposition to tie voter registration with registration for your PFD check. Again, the Election Day is on November 8th. That is now just 22 days away.
Yeah, don't stand on the sidelines. Cast your ballot. It's too important. We want to thank our candidates for sharing their evening with us. Ray Metcalf, Margaret Stock, and Joe Miller. Thanks very much for being here, candidates. And that's going to do it for us. Remember to cast your vote on November 8th. Then join us here at Channel 2 News to see how the balloting comes out throughout the evening. We'll have updates and complete coverage for you on that Tuesday night. For all of us here at Channel 2 News, have a good night.